For now, this stream is just going to be going over the tier list I have on the TFT Anomaly sites. This is my site, I update it. Uh, I am currently Artstock Diamond, but I have been Grandmaster and Master in the past, and this list is not just my opinion, it is reviewed like from pros. Or not, okay, it's not reviewed by pros, it is me reviewing what pros do. So like I'm not like just pulling this out of my ass. I'm watching competitive TFT. I am listening to what people say. So like there isn't gonna be like super crazy weird takes. There's gonna be like some spicy stuff, but like that's just me knowing and other people finding out later. Because there has been a bit of that on the original list. I had a lot of people complain about certain placements, and then come today, a lot of it is pretty much vindicated. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep doing my thing. And if there's something that's like really troll, I mean, I'll fix it. That's what I've been doing. Like if I'm wrong, I don't have a problem changing the list. The YouTube video might suffer from outdated info, but the actual list on the website itself will be updated if something is found to be broken or something is found to be terrible. Like, I have no problems making adjustments. Yeah, tftanomalies.com. Okay, so I'm gonna start from the top, just go bottom. But I will, okay, actually, I'll start with this one D tier, and then I'll go top bottom, just because I want to talk about Into the Unknown. I think design-wise, this anomaly exists in a really cool space. However, in practice, this just feels really bad to take. The only way you take it is if you have an extra copy, or you're not going to guarantee to have your units in the short term. So, like, if you're like 2 copies of a unit, you can send one. But the thing is, if you also hit another like you would want the 2-star. So like it's weird, and you don't want to send your actual main carry out for 3 rounds, so that's just losing 3 rounds for free. So yeah, the actual power level of this anomaly isn't bad, but I mean I think you can compare it to something like Berserker Rage, which is pretty much just a clear upgrade. So I don't really see there's any reason to take this. Like the times where it would be like even takeable are like so rare, and even then you'd probably rather have something else. So this is the only one that I'd say is probably unclickable, like 99.9% of the time. Everything else at least has their situations. Maybe they're niche, or maybe they're not that strong, but at least like they're clickable in some spots. This one I don't think is clickable. But yeah. And from here I'm just gonna go top to bottom, because it's a little easier that way. Mage Armor, I think, is the best anomaly in the game, because it is rather niche, but in those niches, it is like a true Exodia anomaly, and it's not like it has few use cases. It's like niche, but there is enough situations and comps that can use it that it's, I think, I feel comfortable putting it like as the best anomaly in the game. What people don't consider about this is that Mage Armor, like, it scales with your AP, but all units innately have 100 AP, so bare minimum, you're getting 50 armor and magic resist, and then, which on its own is not bad. It's actually, like, pretty decent. But if you are playing a unit that has a lot of AP, in addition to, like, their base AP, then you're gonna have more. So this is incredibly abusable on, like, anyone that can use Archangels, because like whether it's frontline or backline, frontline, a lot of these units have shields or healing, and that makes them, like with Mage Armor, it makes them like literally unkillable. And then backliners, you can build a Gunblade, or you can build a Bloodthirster along with either Archangels or like Dominator AP stacking or something like that, and you would also be unkillable that way. Like, it's not really explored. Like, at least it's not like a meta thing, but like the ceiling is up there. Like, people saw this with like Lone Hero Lux, but Lone Hero Lux was like literally just like the surface of what this does. Like, everyone pinned it on Lone Hero, but like it was just mage armor. And like you can take other anomalies and try the same thing, but it's not the same. In a video that I already recorded on stream, but I haven't like made the video yet, I talk about how stats multiplication works, and mage armor is in a unique space where it rewards you for having healing or shielding in your kit by providing armor. Uh, Armor is incredibly valuable when you have a lot of healing or a lot of shielding, and a lot of units also have innate durability, which is where my Watcher reroll comp is kind of going. But yeah, basically this is just too much stats. Also, they buffed it again, so like some of the tooltips here aren't updated. But this is 50% now, which is absolutely insane. I don't know why people are updating or not. I don't know why Riot buffed it again. It started at 30, and I thought 30 was already a lot. And then they keep buffing it. But yeah. You kind of need to, like, it's one of those ones, like, where you have to, like, already be playing into it, but at least there are backups. So you can still play your comps, and if you don't hit mage armor. But if you do hit mage armor, like, in a lot of different situations, the game is just already won. Next, we have our first new one, which is Infectious Anomaly. Infectious Anomaly, what it does is it gives a little bit of AD and AP, and then it spreads across your team. So it gives your whole team a bunch of stats. And this is really, really strong in a lot of different comps. Because, okay, like this being here specifically is a product of the meta. Because a lot of the strongest comps right now really, really enjoy having like this AD and AP. I'm thinking of Scrap, I'm thinking of Enforcer, I'm thinking of Renata, comps like that. Even like Urgot. I don't know what else is like top meta. Academy. It spreads across your team, and then it just gives a lot of stats, and then these stats are just really valuable to have for your whole team. Because it's like having half of an anomaly, but just on your whole team. And that is probably more valuable than having one on just one unit. A Smeech is another one that also uses this really well. Like ambushers. Yeah. But yeah. In a meta where it's like only sorcerers, dominators, like artillerists, maybe this is like a little lower, but it's just incredible value right now. That in most comps that you are playing, like you should just take this, and it's just too good. Next we have Deep Roots. This is one of the first ones that people complained about seeing, because I saw this and then I tested it and this thing is broken. People are now realizing that Deep Roots is indeed pretty broken. The stats it gives are really strong, and CC immunity is also really strong. The other effects, like there's a lot of niche tech with it, but I'm not even considering that in this placement. That's for another time. That's something for myself to do. Little Duck's tried. I don't think he's done enough with it. Like, there's just too much tech with this, but it's not consistent. So, yeah, that's a whole nother mess. But just the base value, like just generically within this anomaly, you have a ton of health, some armor, magic resist, CC immunity. That is enough to be just an insanely good tank anomaly. And yeah, now a lot of people agree, so I feel fine putting this here now. Comeback Story. This is another one that people have caught on to being just incredibly broken, because it's going to be useful in pretty much every game. You're going to be low health probably at some point in time. If you're not, that means you're just winning the game, and that's fine. But if you are low, it's going to be even more valuable. The stats probably look bad on this, and I think that's why Riot buffed it that one time. Just because people are going to take this in desperate situations. That's the design space that they chose for this. But, I mean, so that's going to mess up the stats when you're going to go 8th and you take something that's good when you're about to go 8th. And then they realized very quickly that this thing did not need to be buffed. But yeah, this is just the best generic damage anomaly on your main carry in the game. So yeah, you can take this in pretty much any comp. Even if you're not low yet, if you feel like you don't know what else to take, if you just see this, you can take this on like literally any comp. And if you don't get the full value, that's fine because that means you've won the game. And if you're bleeding health, then this becomes better. And then when you're on your last legs, you're getting like at least like 40% damage amp, and that's more than any of the other ones. So it just never feels bad to take this. Dramatic entrance. This is another one that people didn't understand in the beginning, and then they realized that it was pretty broken. So, it's a little harder to use because if you put this on your main tank, your board needs to be able to live long enough for your main tank to dramatic entrance onto the board. Otherwise, your front line dies and then your enemy is on your back line, and that's not good. So, there's two situations. There's one where you put this on your main tank and you actually use it intelligently. The other one is just to put it on a secondary tank. People have been using this just for the free stun because that is pretty strong. It's only 6 seconds in, which isn't that long, and it's just a free board wide stun. That alone is like pretty good value. But if you have a board where your main tank can benefit from this, they're getting a insane amount of health. Like they're getting basically fortified up front, like, after this procs. And I think these numbers are a little outdated. I think, what is it? Yeah, they nerfed the health, they buffed the stun, but you can take this in pretty much any comp if you know what you're doing. And this is just incredibly powerful because it's an absolutely insane combat like buff for your tank, and then the board wide stun is just really, really powerful utility. But you need to make sure that your frontline doesn't get griefed by dramatic entrance. So if you play with that in mind, this is very easily S tier. The last anomaly here is Stone Skin. This is yet another one that people have complained to me about, saying that I have overrated it, saying that it's not that good, that pros don't take this, so I shouldn't put this in S tier. However, if you look at what pros are saying now, this thing is broken. This anomaly basically guarantees that a unit survives the first like 10 or so seconds of combat, which for a lot of comps is incredibly powerful. You can put this on your main tank. The longer they live, the longer your backline lives, and that's basically your tank doing their job. This is the best anomaly for like tanking this on a single unit for the like majority of the round. Like if your board is already lasting like 20-25 seconds, which is when this starts to die out completely, like they've already done their job. And then the other situation is where you put this on a melee carry, someone that can be vulnerable, but with Stone Skin they're not vulnerable. You can greed their positioning, they will tank, and because they're a melee carry, they probably have like lifesteal, so they just won't die. I think this is more broken than on tanks. On other units like Echo, Vi, Urgot, Mordekaiser, these types of units, like these melee like carries, like they just tank infinite damage, and with their healing, they heal back up and they live long enough to do their job. Like for instance, in Urgot reroll, he just wants to survive like the initial burst, and then with his like sustain, like by the time Stone Skin starts to wear off, he's probably killed the front line, and then at that point, he's done. This anomaly has done its job. Vi just wants to live long enough to like do enough damage. By the time that this starts to wear off, Enforcer should have enough stacks if you're playing that, or in like Twitch comp, your Twitch probably is ramped up enough. In Dominator, your Mordekaiser has at least casted once, probably, and that's probably enough to take out the front line, and then by then your Silco has scaled up, or your other Conqueror, whatever units have done enough damage. I mean, yeah. It's not just those, you can take this on like Ambushers, or like literally any melee board with a melee carry that heals. this is just incredible value, and I think people now consider this one of, if not the best anomalies in the game. And yeah, I've kind of been saying this the whole time, but I'm glad people agree. In A tier, a lot. I mean, these tiers are a bit fatter, but that's kind of normal. So the first one is Center of the Universe. This one, this tooltip is not updated from the new patch, but yeah, I've been saying that this was not bad pretty much the entire time. They didn't buff it that much, but now everyone thinks that this is crazy broken because they finally understood that it works on ranged units. So I think people are overrating it a little bit because I think if you were to ask a lot of pros, they'd probably put this in like S tier. I don't think it's that good, but it is definitely very strong, and you can take this pretty easily in a lot of different comps. Uh, the fact that it feels flat damage doesn't really matter when like like this flat damage is fake because it's a anomaly that's, I mean, a lot of these flat damage anomalies, they just scale with how tanky your board is. So like it'll do more damage if your board lasts long enough. Like that's just how it works. And there's a lot of other anomalies that work in similar manner, but this is just the most like visually obvious for people. So that's why a lot of people are gravitating towards this one being very, very good. Especially if you center, if you put it like specifically in like this hex, arranged units, because on this spot specifically, it hits like it's like it goes like in a circle around and it hits like these units. Or I don't know if it's like the, I don't know, but it hits a lot of the front line. So that's like the min max, and that's how you get a lot of damage for free. But yeah, this one, it does a lot of damage over time, like, and it's very good. I don't think it's quite S tier, but I do think it is definitely very good. And with the small buff that it got, people finally realized that. So I think that's good. Because I never thought it was like terrible, but I thought it was like underrated for a while. Next one is Fortified. This is one that I personally have underrated. So before we've been talking about stuff that other people have underrated, uh, this is one that I think I have underrated, mostly because I've just been comparing it to like Dramatic Entrance and Deep Roots. But Fortified is still just very, very powerful on its own. Like most tank anomalies in general are just very, very powerful. And even if I would be happier seeing Deep Roots or Dramatic Entrance, this is still like incredible value. You get up to 60% max health or 72. I still don't actually know if it's up to 5 times total or if it's 5 additional times total. But either way, this max health increase also serves as a heal, which isn't like that crazy, but like it's a lot of value for your main tank. Assuming that they're just not going to get one shots, but I'm assuming that you have enough tank items on your main tank that won't be the case. Yeah, most comps have a main tank, so this is just good. Next we have Titanic Strikes. This tilt is wrong. This is, I think, one of the most underrated anomalies. It's a niche one because there aren't actually a lot of units that use it, but if you look at what this does, this anomaly is actually crazy. So attacks deal an additional 50% damage to the target and adjacent enemies. People only see this part, but they don't realize that this is 50% on-hit damage to the main target as well, which is just a 50% damage increase to auto attacks, that's a lot. That's more than other anomalies, like for sure, and it's AoE. That's really crazy value. The problem is that there aren't that many units that actually care about that. Like there aren't that many units that would use it. I would say like there are like aren't, because a lot of the units don't actually, like their damage is in their ability, so you're not really gonna get that much value from it. I'd say this, but like on each of these cases, there's also like reasons why you might not want it. Like it doesn't apply on the Twitch Bolt; it only applies on his main targets. Tristana is ability user. Like her ability is mostly for power, but it makes her auto attacks do a lot of damage. Nocturne would be really good. It's a better in ranged form. If you have ranged Nocturne, like through an artifact, then this becomes really, really insane. On melee, it's still very good. It's just like melee Nocturne is like not as good. Draven, it doesn't work with his axes, so you get like it doesn't scale extra with his axes. It only scales with like Conqueror or AD, but it's still very good. There's probably like other ones. Like you can probably put this on some melees too. Mbessa is one that I think it's pretty good on. I think Ezreal is probably like the easiest user because his ability counts as two autos, and then otherwise he's just autoing, so it's just consistent, very consistent value. But the damage increase is really, really high, and I think people don't notice how much it's actually doing. And there aren't that many units that use it, but on those boards it is incredible. Oh, another one I didn't talk about. Zeri. This is very, very good on Zeri, who is pretty much all auto attack damage. Touch of Frost. They buffed this to 8 seconds, which is really crazy. A lot of people find it hard to quantify how much like a utility anomaly is because like it's not doing damage. You don't see it on the damage charts. So it's kind of hard to tell how much the chill is doing and the stuns because it's lowering your enemy's damage. It's not increasing yours. But if you recall from when Frozen Heart was an item, chill is a very, very powerful effect. And if you have a unit that can use it well, that can spread this to a lot of like enemies, this is really, really like strong for an anomaly. I think the best users are like people with good AoE. So you don't want stuff that's gonna be only hitting like one or two targets. You want stuff that's gonna be hitting like as many as possible. But I think this is super underrated on stuff like Echo, Corki I guess hits enough, Swain, Gangplank, like Ziggs, more kind of like there is a lot of units that can spread this really well. And what it does is it gives a 20% reduction in attack speed, which is almost a 20% reduction in damage. And then this is for 8 seconds. This refreshes on ability, so you can have perma chill on a lot of units. And then in addition, there's the stun. I think this is the part that people focused on. I think this is probably the worst part of the thing just because this doesn't proc that frequently. But when it does, like, it can be pretty good. Like, on backline, this doesn't happen very much, which is, I think, what people focus on. It's the main reason people think that the Warwick experiments bonus also sucks, because it's the exact same thing. But yeah, I think focusing on this is really, really strong. And then this is like a nice bonus. But I think this is one that they buffed way too much. Like 8 seconds is crazy because that's basically permanent application. With the fact that you could just reapply it on a subsequent ability cast. And yeah, I think this is one that has not. I think this is one that will be more prevalent as people realize how strong this is. Next, you have Magic Experts. This is really strong because it's really easy to get a lot of AP. The existence of Archangels, and then the existence of Dominator traits makes this really valuable. There's other like instances where it's going to be good. You can just take this into like Sork or like, and it's fine. But it's just that like the number that this becomes is just higher than the numbers that other AP anomalies will get to for most of the game. Like if you're like really late into a round, maybe you'll get to like value from like magic training, or maybe if you're like in like the last fight, you'll have like a lot of cultivating magic value. But in general, for flat AP, magic expert is just gonna give more than others for most of the game, which is why it's this high up. Like this is just from me looking at the numbers and comparing them to the other numbers. But yeah, for AP units, which is just, I mean, AP, just all the AP units, this is a pretty viable take. Next we have Brutal Claws. This is, I don't have a tooltip, but this is one of the new ones as well. This one's also really, really strong, and I think if people learn how min-maxing the bleed works, this is really, really strong. I already talked about it in my other video, but there's a lot of units that can use this because they'll just have their Infinity Edge or just their Jeweled Gauntlet, and then this takes them to 100% crits. And then if you min-max the bleed, you get a lot of extra damage for free, and the amount of total damage that this anomaly can bring is just really, really high. It's not as visible as like something like maybe Bully or like Comeback Story, but I'm telling you, this will bring a lot of damage to your carry, and there's a lot of units that can use it well. Like, it's not just a crit anomaly for ambushers, even though ambushers can use it really well, but pretty much anyone that has, like, at least, that would at least want spell crits, literally anyone that has a Jeweled Gauntlet or Infinity Edge on them will benefit from this. And that's a lot of any sorcerer, any dominator, most artillerists, anyone that just happens to also want it, like Twitch, Caitlyn. Because another thing is that Infinity Edge is easier to build than Deathblade. So even though there's a lot of units that would want Deathblade more, they usually end up building Infinity Edge, like Zeri, for instance, as well. And because it's like their items are comparable, but this is easier to build. So a lot of units end up building IE anyway. And if you have Infinity Edge or Jeweled Gauntlet by the time you have your anomaly, then the damage increase is absolutely insane. Like it's comparable to like max value Comeback Story. It's comparable to like Titanic Strikes on an auto attacker. It's more than Center of the Universe. This is one that people will realize is really, really strong. Next we have Hive Mind, another new one. This one's a little interesting because this is the first Econ anomaly. It gives 25% damage amp flats, which is pretty good compared to other damage amp ones. Like there's no conditions for this, it just gives it flat, and that number's pretty good. But on top of that, it also gives you a copy of the first champion that unit kills each player combats. So, I mean, because this is like damage amp, you're gonna put this on your main carry anyway, so assuming your main carry kills at least one unit, you're getting a copy of that unit, and that's basically free gold. Best case scenario, this also helps you upgrade your board, in which case that is really valuable. If not, worst case scenario, it's gold. Gold is not bad at all. It helps you push level 9, level 10. That is something that cannot be replicated by other anomalies. So that in itself is just really powerful. And then you have these two together. Like you have basically you have Pilfer plus like damage amp. That's really, really powerful. Last Chance. This is a niche one, but in those niche situations, it's very, very strong. You put this on a main carry or a tank. I think the biggest examples are like probably frontline Darius, just because he like it makes him tank more. But like really, any melee carry that like kind of can use it well would want this. Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking of stuff like this. I guess maybe this one. Maybe this one. But yeah, all these melee carries, like, it gives them an extra life, and in that extra life, they're, like, they have the potential to do their thing, but they also are just living longer. Like, even, like, on a tank, technically, that can be a potential, like 5 or 6 seconds of extra life, which is also just really powerful. On a carry, this can be more, because they usually have, like, enough healing that maybe they can just completely reset. But even if not, I think there's enough situations where you can take this and then you'll get a lot of value from this. Because this also, I mean, okay, there's some bugs where, like, certain executes, I think they canceled this and you just didn't get it, but I think they just removed that. So since then, I think this is just better because of those, I think Collector and, like, I don't know what other executes Because I don't even know if it was all executes. I think it was just some executes. But yeah, now I think it doesn't do that anymore. So you'll just always get the second life. So now it's pretty good. I don't know if they fixed the other bug where this makes your unit like AFK for like the first second or two when they revive. If that is also fixed, then this is like where it would be probably. Doubles as a tank. Like you wouldn't put this on a tank, but like on a unit that kind of serves as a tank, like Urgot in his comp, or like Vi, or like I guess these. Then it's like really it's really good. Power up and cultivating magic. They're both together. As the patch goes on, I might separate them, but for now I'm just keeping them together because they're pretty much the same thing. These are two new ones as well. Cultivating magic is the same thing, but for AP. So you gain AD, and then you gain more for every 10,000 damage they deal, which is not that hard to do. If you are playing a comp with like a primary carry, you can get this almost every fight. And then in some fights you can get this multiple times in like really niche situations. But this can add up to a lot of extra AP and AD. So you just need to make sure you're playing a comp that has a unit that can use this well. And you need to be able to like actually like win. Like if it takes a while to ramp up. So if you're low health, then you might not have enough turns to ramp up and scale infinitely. So this isn't like comeback story where you're guaranteed to get value at some point in the game. With this and cultivating magic, you might just die. It is still, it has really, really high ceiling. On first cast, gain a stun and you gain some attack speed and omnivamp. This is, I think, the best usage of this is for the reposition because you leap into the largest clump of enemies. And for some units, that actually does a lot. Specifically, like, either units that can do enough AoE or units that have like a good burst with like this. I think Nocturne, Darius are really, really good examples where they position and they get max value from their AoE because they're diving into the largest enemy clump, and the more like the more things that are around them, the more damage their AoE is going to be. And otherwise, like the Omnivamp, the attack speed, it's like nice, but it's not a huge part of the anomaly value, I think. It's also a stun on the largest clump, which is, and it's not obvious. So unless you see that they have diving in, you're not going to position around it. So it catches a lot of people off guard in a lot of cases. But yeah, if you can get a key unit into a really good position, then you get a lot of value from this. And I think just the surprise factor, like it's a surprise stun in a lot of cases, and then in some cases the positioning does a lot of extra damage for that unit. So I think that's pretty underrated. I think there are, like I said, there aren't that many units that would use this, but in those situations, like there's enough that I would put it this high. Like, and then it's really, really powerful on those units. Next is Minimes. This one was buffed. This tooltip is wrong. Minimes was buffed very drastically, but it was deserved because this anomaly was really, really terrible. And now it's really strong. I was a little worried that it was going to be too strong, but after some time has passed, I think it's like, I think it's strong, but I think it's like probably like at the correct power level. So you get 3 minis that deal bonus damage every 2 attacks, and they reduce armor. So this is like ×3, because you have 3 minis, this is ×3. So every 2 attacks, you get 90% bonus AD and 15% armor reduction, which is really strong. There aren't that many units that use this. Like, it's in the same category as Titanic Strikes, or there aren't that many auto attack based champions. So there aren't that many users, but this is a really, really strong damage increase on those users. Because every 2 attacks, you're basically getting like 90 damage. I mean, I don't know how to like mathematically quantify armor reduction, but this is just consider this to be some amounts more damage. And then this, every 2 attacks, you get 90. So instead of 200%, you're doing 290, which is like a 45% damage increase. That's pretty good. Most anomalies I think like the good benchmark is that most anomalies are like a 30% damage increase. Like I think that's like around what it ends up being. So yeah, on the units that use it well, this is a lot of damage. The units that use it well, namely, are like Twitch, Zeri, maybe Ezreal. Like I said, there's not many. Like maybe this guy. Like ranged Nocturne. Like there aren't that many users, but it is really strong on those users. So, and it's enough that I'd put it high, because as I'll talk about later, in C tier, there's like super hyper situational ones that like, but are only good on like maybe 1 or 2 units. But this is good on enough units. The condition is just auto attacker, well, AD auto attacker. Legacy of Shurima. This one's like a little hard to explain because it is it's a bruiser anomaly that like, that's the design space. It kind of like is like an okay tank anomaly, and it's kind of an okay bruiser anomaly. The real hurting point is 10 seconds into combat, but there's a lot of comps that are made to survive to that point. And at which point this can just become kind of like an Exodia. I think specifically like Mordekaiser uses this really well, where without like heavy investments in Mordekaiser, you're gonna position him in a way that he's gonna be kind of safe anyway. Like if you mess up your positioning anyway and he dies, then it doesn't matter. But when you play around Mordekaiser optimally, like he's not like gonna take like the you're not gonna position him front line. You're gonna let him like walk up so he's a little safer. Where you're in a case where you're pretty much guaranteed to proc this by like not positioning poorly, then this is just a lot of stats. This is just like a ridiculous amount of stats. And similarly, there's a lot of units that use this. I think Mordekaiser is the clear best, but there's a lot of other units that can use this. Like you put this on just a frontliner. If you are careful with how you use it and can pretty much rely, because 10 seconds isn't like a crazy amount of time, but it's longer than like dramatic entrance, and it's not, some comps can't function outside like with this proccing after 10 seconds, so you have to be careful about that. But I think because it's just enough value, like the stats are just really high, that there's enough units that can use it. And I think this is a pretty good spot to put this anomaly. Now down here we have Nothing Wasted. This was, I considered, one of the best anomalies in the game, but they've nerfed it several times because it was like one of the best anomalies in the game. If this tooltip were accurate, this would still be like probably like at least top 3 best anomalies in the game. Is unfortunately outdated. It is literally halved. They halved what this anomaly does, and it's still pretty strong. You put this on any caster, and they're going to cast more, and that's it. They cast more, and that's a lot of the units' damage for a lot of. It's a more damage uptime. So a lot of units, when they aren't casting, they're doing pretty much nothing. They're just autoing to get mana to cast, and they're doing pretty much no damage otherwise. And this removes that window of like damage downtime. So mana anomalies are really powerful. I think this is still a better version of Killstreak because you can kind of play around Nothing Wasted by putting like kind of weaker units in a place where they're gonna die if you want to funnel mana. Killstreak 1 gives less mana, and 2 it requires like you have to play around the enemy's positioning, which is not that easy to do. And Nothing Wasted has the potential to give more because even at 50%, some units have a pretty high mana cost, so you can potentially give a pretty decent amount of mana. I guess I'll move on to Killstreak because they're kind of the same thing. This is on kill instead of on ally death, which I think on kill is a worse proc condition than on ally death. At least like with the balance changes to Nothing Wasted, 20 is like a bit more comparable to what you get from Nothing Wasted. But I think this proc condition is still worse. Some units with low mana costs like this a lot. I think like anyone with like a mana cost like lower than like 50, like it can probably and would be getting kills because this is on not on takedown, this is on kills. There are some units that like I think Killstreak Heimer is an obvious one. Less obvious one would be like Cassio, Lux, to some extent Renata because of Visionary. Morgana would be one. Those are the clear synergies, and then there's you can take this on pretty much any caster, and they would be like takeable. I guess it wouldn't be as strong, but I mean, getting 20 more mana like helps catch up. I guess there's some units that like maybe get multiple kills from a cast, so that can still cause chaining. Like I guess for that, I would say like maybe like Swain would be an example. But now I think putting these two together is kind of okay, and I think this is around where they are because they're both very powerful. Like there's still like just enough units that use it really well. That if you are playing around one and you see this, like you can take it and it'll be fine. Magic training uh has been nerfed a little bit, but it is still pretty strong in a couple niche situations. So what this is good for is it gives team-wide value. And what's good about magic training in particular is that a lot of the units that are playing around the stacking AP are also playing with frontline, and most frontliners scale with AP. So not only are you buffing, like even if you're playing around like Kog'Maw, for instance, which is probably one of the best users of this, and like there aren't that many carries on the board, the frontline getting AP also makes them tankier. So like, as opposed to strength training, where the like most of the board might not be using the AD very much. And then other examples are like Renata slash like Visionaries. Visionaries use this really well because they don't get AP, but you're giving it to not just your carry, but to your whole team. So Visionary boards use this well. And then specifically, like any, I mean, I guess those are like the main ones. The other mage traits, for instance, they give a lot of AP, so it's not like as much value, like Sorcerer and Dominator. So like they don't like, the math doesn't really like make it so that they want that much more AP. I don't know what else to say. There's a couple good users, like Kog'Maw, Heimer, can provide value. Considering that this applies to your whole team, if you look at all these like tanks, they all scale with AP. And then Visionaries scale with each other. I don't know how many other boards there would be besides that. Maybe if you're playing like a low Sorcerer or like a low Dominator board, this would be good. Like maybe some Bronze for Life. But yeah, I think broadly speaking, this is takeable in a lot of comps, and then like really strong in a couple. So I think this is, I might consider moving this down, but I think people generally think this is a really strong anomaly, so I'm fine leaving it where it is. Because I do like personally the idea of like scaling anomalies. So this might be bias, but I think this is fine. I don't think people are gonna complain about this because I think a lot of other people agree. So yeah. Giant size. This is one of the most like visually to see anomalies because it makes the thing bigger and it gives 1,000 health, which is a lot. I think what people underrate is the size increase because this can make the units with giant size block certain projectiles because this follows the same like rules as League in terms of like size scaling. And even though like there aren't units designed with that in mind, the TLDR is that you can still randomly block stuff by being bigger. And that's pretty good value because you're putting this on a tank. So if your tank is blocking stuff, like projectiles from hitting the backline, that's pretty good. It's down here because I think people overrate how good this is compared to other tank anomalies. It is still very good, but I think it's a little overrated. Even on like the best case scenario, which is like on Garen, who used this really, really well. But I mean, since then, Garen has fallen a little bit out of the meta because they've nerfed him. And this is still pretty good on just any tank, but I think it's not as good as some of the other ones. But it's still A tier because I think pretty much all the tank anomalies are just broken. So, yeah. Speaking of tank anomaly, Bulwark, I think maybe I might move this a little higher because of how good it is with bruisers as well. But yeah, this is another tank anomaly. It's just broken because it's a tank anomaly. I think the tank anomalies are more valuable than a lot of the damage ones. At least before all the new ones were added, which some of them power crept some of the older ones. But Bulwark gives a lot of stats, and it's pretty easy to play around. 40 below 50% health, and then above it, it's 120 armor and magic resist, which is a lot of stats. This is good on tanks. This is good on specifically on watchers, because the way Watcher works is it's the exact same threshold. They're more tanky when they're above 50% health, and this is another anomaly that makes them more tanky when above 50% health. So that first 50% of their max health, they're like super, super, super tanky, and then when they fall below that, they become a lot like squishier. But some of these units also have like healing, like Scar and Vladimir and Garen. So like they can just put themselves back up to the above 50% threshold. And then the other example is on bruisers. In the exact same the same units that use Stone Skin would use this, except this is like a more consistent option. Stone Skin is early combat priority, like it's early combat focused, which a lot of these units would rather prefer, but this is the same thing pretty much. I mean, there's more, but like a lot of these units care more about the beginning of combat, so that's why I think Stone Skin is better. But Bulwark is still really strong. I think I should probably move it up a little bit higher, but like it's probably still A tier, but like maybe like closer to like fortified. But yeah, armor scales really, really well with healing, shielding, and max health, and durability. There's anything that is like it scales more with other sources of defensive stats, of which healing and shielding are examples of. So because of that, Bulwark is a really, really strong anomaly on not just tanks, but on bruisers who have healing, and that's how they play. Next up is Berserker Rage. I think this is one that is underrated because of how like the numbers. 25, and then when below 70%, it's tripled. So this is 75 AP and AD. There aren't that many units that use both, but even without that, there's a lot of units that just would like to have 75 AD or AP. So an example of that would be like anyone that heals. All these units that wants like Omnivamp and like Lifesteal and stuff like that. When they're lower, this is a little niche, but we'll talk about it later. It makes them do more when they're low. It makes them do more damage, and that more damage makes them heal more. So it's like it kind of doubles. And like 75 AD is a lot. 75 AP is a lot, and it is given to them when they need it, which is when they're low, because that makes them do more damage and that makes them heal more. Some of these have hybrid ratios. Vi has some AP scaling, and Best has pretty good AP scaling. Vander's another. I'm not going to talk about it very much now, but Vander is a very, very good user of this. Like, if you play a Bruiser Vander, you don't have to play. Like, you don't have to have a unit that uses both. Like, both stats. If you just look at one, like just the AD for instance, it's still really good on a lot of like Bruiser units. I think it's underrated. And I think since like if they Riot has kept buffing it, I think it is already good. I think more people should take it. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Invisibility. This is really powerful because of the aggro drop, and mostly because of the aggro drop. It's been nerfed, and because they nerfed the time, they also nerfed the amount of damage this does. Because of that, this part isn't that valuable. I mean, it's not bad, but the main value is that you turn invisible, which is an aggro drop. And having a aggro drop every 6 seconds is pretty good. Not as broken as it was when it was 4 seconds, but 6 seconds, like having a free aggro drop in it just can be very clutch. So it's still really, really good for frontliners that want to live longer. Now, you have to be careful when your frontliner is like your main tank. I wouldn't take this on like Urgot, for instance, because if you aggro drop and Urgot is your like main frontline, then they're just gonna aggro onto your backline, and you don't want that. But if you're playing a board with like a lot of frontline, and you have a melee carry, then invisibility is really powerful. So stuff like ambushers, where like the whole board is melee, or like I think of like I mean for some reason the first thing I think of is like hero augments Irelia, but there's like many other examples. Violet, Ambessa, Vi. Vi is like like Enforcer Vi, maybe not, but Mordekaiser is a good one because you want them to re-aggro onto your Garen or your Mundo or someone else other than him. Since it's nerfs, it's become a lot worse, but it is still pretty nice to have. Comparing it to like Zania's or Edge of Night, those proc when you're taking damage and you get low, or is this just procs periodically? So sometimes it saves you, and sometimes it saves like it procs when you don't need it. So it's not like consistent. And when it was 4 seconds, it's just too frequent. So like it doesn't really matter. Like you're just gonna get it, like, and it'll keep your unit alive. At 6 seconds, it just might not proc in time, but I think that's fine. I think that's a bit more balanced because having a potential GA every 6 seconds, you can get like 5 or 6 GAs in like a really lucky scenario. Like, that is really strong. Last one, which might be too high, but I mean I have it here for one reason. So Eagle Eye is like kind of weird. It has two effects, and like it has users that want it for different reasons. The reason that everyone looks at is, or the thing that everyone looks at is the damage, like the AD. But for some of the new anomalies, this was just the best source of AD damage for like an anomaly, and it's not like super good. Every 2 seconds you gain 6 AD, so on a unit that doesn't move, at 10 seconds you have 30% AD, which is not like a crazy amount, but it's like not bad. The other thing is that it gives +1 range. I think this is the part that's underrated. There's a lot of units that can use the +1 range, even if they don't use the AD part. And if they get like 6 AD or something every now and then, 6, 12, like that can be pretty good. But I think like some units like Nocturne can use this a lot. I mean, that's the big one because of like the ranged Nocturne tech. I mean, other examples would be like some of these. Like this is range tech, and even though they're going to be moving a lot and they're not going to get the AD very frequently, having +1 range on these units is really strong because of how some other kits work. I think people know about Mordekaiser, but people don't know that these 3 units have like AoE effects that are extended with range. Rumble Flamethrower specifically, the upgrade for his Flamethrower, Savika's Flamethrower, and Warwick's ability, they all scale with range. So having +1 range makes their thing bigger. And if you've seen the clips, like the Ladok clips of like Sniper Savika or Sniper Rumble, if like you see those, like that can potentially be a lot. And this is only +1 range, it's not anything crazy, but it is a decent damage increase. And at the very least, it's also a safety net. So it's like having one RFC from the past, like before we had red buff. It's just having one RFC, and there are some units that can use that pretty decently. There's also some units that get completely screwed by having that, like Darius. But I don't think you're gonna worry about that on unit. You just don't take this on units that don't use it well. Apart from that, like I said, just considering the AD parts, you can just put this on any AD units, and it's good, or any ranged AD units. But it's not as much as with other anomalies. So I might, depending on how people like, this one also might be lowered. I think it's a little too niche, but if we say people start to take it on specifically the units that want +1 range, if I see that more and it becomes popular, I'll leave this here. I'm a little, it might not be like reliable enough to do that. So, and it does get outperformed by now stuff like power up, for instance. I think that's just a clear upgrade. but I do think it's a little underrated because people forget that it gives +1 range, and I think there's tech with that, and I've seen it to be pretty good. I just don't think that publicly enough people have understood that. Okay, now B tier. These are like the either more niche or like less of a ceiling. So I might move some of them, but like okay. Ultimate Hero used to be very good, but then they kept nerfing it. Now you have to wait 4 rounds for this to happen. There's also the other thing that is that Riot just nerfed a lot of the OP 4 stars, namely Violet and Singed. So now this is not as good, and now there aren't many good 1-cost rerolls, so there really isn't a reason to take this. I think it's still probably the best thing in those comps, but those comps just aren't very good right now. But I don't feel comfortable putting it lower, because it's still, like, technically very good. I don't know. But this Anomaly has fallen off from being one of the most broken things in the game. And I think now, if you have a spot for it, if you're playing specifically a comp that uses this well, I think it's still probably correct to just take it. I think it's over nerfed, to be honest. I think considering that they nerfed the 4 stars that were broken, they didn't really need to nerf this, because now you just never see this. Next is Wolf Familiars. They keep upping this. Oh wait, was that how low the numbers originally were? Oh my god. Yeah, Wolf Familiars. I think it's literally, yeah, they've over doubled it. This is, I think, underrated. I think this is similar to Center of the Universe, where like at least Center of the Universe, you could take this on like AD units and you can see how much damage it does based on looking at the magic damage. This is similar, except this is AD. This is physical damage and it scales with AD, so you only want to take this in AD comps. Because of that, it's really hard to tell how much damage this is doing, but I feel like this isn't that bad. Like the damage is actually pretty good. It's like Center of the Universe, except that the damage is less obvious. I'm not gonna put it higher because I don't have people backing me up here. This is just my observation. Like I think most people think this is just awful, but the reason for that is it's hard to tell how much damage this is doing. It's not like visually obvious. People aren't going to pay attention to the wolves. So it's really hard to know like what this is doing. But I think the damage is pretty good because you're essentially getting 150% AD at a 0.9% attack speed, which is almost like 130% every second. But I don't think it's that bad. I think at the very least there's a lot of like, because this is at least broad enough that you could take this safely in most comps. So if it was determined that this Anomaly is actually really strong because the damage is actually a lot higher than people realized, then this would shoot up because you can take this pretty comfortably in any AD comp. But we don't know. You can't tell, so I will leave this here. Sign time. This is one that people have underrated, I think. I might move it higher, honestly, because I think people don't understand what this does. But this is not a damage anomaly. This is a healing anomaly. This is a tank anomaly. And I don't think people are aware of that. But it is really, really powerful on like solo frontline situations where you're hitting multiple units because they're wrapping. I guess like I guess a more easy example to understand is this. But there's a lot of other units that you can do that aren't Swain. And also, I personally don't believe you should be solo frontlining Swain. But, yeah, if you play a board where your frontline looks like this, or like even if like you have other frontliners, but your main tank is this, let's say you have your thing like back here, you are healing more, and that's what that is. Because it's 160% magic damage, and you heal for 100% of the damage dealt. Meaning, if you hit multiple enemies, you hit like 4 or 5 enemies, you're healing for, like, I guess, post-mitigation, like, you're healing for like 500 every 2 seconds. And that's a lot for some units. I think if you're playing a really tanky unit, especially one that doesn't have, like, a lot of health, or a lot of healing, but rather is, like, more armor, magic resist, or durability, then it becomes really strong. I think like visionary or not a reroll. Like either you whoever your main tank is, probably roll. But you can put this on like Singed or something as well. You can also take it on like the Darius I showed from before, or the Swain. I don't know. There aren't that many units, but I think it is a lot of value. Oh, any like automata is really good on this automata because it procs automata, and automata gives magic armor and magic resist. It's good on Sentinel or like the Academy board like this. But I mean also not just that one, but also like Rebel. It's really good there. But yeah, any board where if you position it a little intelligently to get more healing, then this becomes really strong. I think this is another one that once people learn how, because I think people are get baited into taking this on damage dealers, like Echo, and it's like not bad on him, but I don't think it's that good. I think like the better uses are on tanks, especially ones that uh can either get a lot of AP or that can get that have defensive value in armor and magic resist, or units that solo frontline and then you can wrap around. Because this also, I guess, the comparison would be to the augment thorn plated armor, the one for the bramble vest. People realize that that one's really good for solo frontline, but people don't realize that sometimes like the same thing as an anomaly. So I feel like, and I guess that one's also maybe a little bit more early game centric. This one you get a little later into the game, so it's a little harder to see. But I do think this is underrated, and I might move it higher. But I will either prove myself that this is broken, or when someone else catches on, someone who's has a wider reach than me, someone like this up something says that this is broken, I think I will have no problems moving this up. Hypervelocity. I feel like this is one that I personally thought was very good. Over time, I've kind of moved it down. I think it's pretty good, but I think the problem is it takes up the same space as like these two mana generation ones, and I think these are just having mana generations a little bit better. This serves the same design role in that you kind of want to take this to help casters. It's okay on AD units, but some of the the units that would want it don't actually use it well. Like namely, I think Zeri or Kog'Maw, they would use it well, but you can't take it. It doesn't work on Zeri. And then Kog'Maw, like most people just builds Rage Blade on him anyway, or like something, or Shojin, and that fulfills the same role. This would be like if you don't have those and instead have like something like this, then it becomes really good. But most people just aren't playing Kog'Maw like that, so yeah, that's my bad. Other examples that would be like of decent users, like it's okay on like all these, but it's like not crazy. It's not like I don't think it's as good as like some of the mana ones because they can help. I think they just give a bit more value, but this one also scales. It's just hard to tell exactly how much it's doing, but I do feel like it's still pretty underrated in general. But I can't really comfortably put it above the mana ones because I think the mana ones are just like just by feeling they do more. And I think most pros have the same sentiments. So I think most people don't take this, but I feel like it's not like in that role, it's still pretty good. The other thing is that this kind of competes with like having like a Nashor's Tooth, which a lot of like if you're playing like a lot of people run Shojin Nashers, and if you have a Nashor's Tooth, you kind of don't need hyper velocity. But I think this becomes a lot better when you have something like Shojin, Jeweled Gauntlets, and then like Guard Breaker or something. If you have like Jeweled Gauntlet Guard Breaker instead of like the Nashers, I'll do this here. So like I'll take like these for instance. So most people say like yeah, you definitely want this, and then you probably also want like this, but then a lot of people go like this, or this, and if you go this, then I think hyper velocity is better. If you go this, it's a little wasted. So, but I think this is an underrated combo anyway. Of items, and there's like other units that use it like this, but like this one will over time, people will either decide that it's good or not. Thorn Skin. This gives good amount of armor and magic resist. It also has the damage reflect. So people know about the synergy with Blighting Jewel, which is funny. It's pretty niche and doesn't have that many applications, but it's pretty funny because it shreds completely the magic resist of the enemy frontline, and it can be okay for mana generation, but a lot of like tanks are mana locked, so like you don't actually get to abuse that. I think some like a healer maybe could use it well, but I think there just aren't that many units that would use that get tanky enough to like abuse it. But I think there will be tech with the damage reflect when people explore it more. I mean, I personally am exploring it more. I just have not seen it when playing the comps that I want to. But I feel like as a baseline, armor magic resist very good. People like it on tanks. People like it on bruisers. And even though this is less armor and magic resist than stuff like bulwark or stone skin, it's still pretty good, and it's still in some cases preferable to stuff like health, like giant sized fortified. So it really depends. And it gives some damage. It's hard to quantify how much damage it does, but just consider it's some damage. And that's not bad at all. Especially since you can take this in pretty much any comp. Defense expert, this is a weird one. They literally doubled this. And I can't tell how good this is, because this obviously scales with how much armor and magic resist you have, but a lot of the time, rather than to double down on armor and magic resist, you usually want to just have other types of defensive stats. So this goes against what a lot of people generally build their items and anomalies around, but 90% is kind of a lot. I feel like this is maybe still underrated, but I'm like hesitant to like actually be someone to go into this. So in some cases, it just might be one of those where the number you get is so high that it outvalues other instances. Because 90% is a lot. In theory, this is good on gargoyles, but gargoyles kind of sucks as an item, and like the double gargoyles like solo frontline isn't really a thing in the sets. So the other thing is that like how much armor and magic resist are you already gonna have? Like let's say you have like 300 somehow. You have like gargoyles and like your sentinel or something. You're playing like Rel and you have a gargoyles and you have like 4 or 6 sentinel. Then in that case I think it would be like a lot. Because that's still technically 270 armor resist. That's 270% more survivability. Like, but like I feel like there are cases where it is like definitely takeable, but then I have to consider like how does this compare to stone skin or bulwark? Like at which point, like I think the benchmark is probably bulwark, if you would get more armor and magic resistance from that. I think because I don't. The other thing is that I don't know if this scales with the base armor and magic resist, because some of them don't. I don't think attack expert or magic expert scales with base stats. So I think that's the problem. I don't actually, because I don't really take this. But if this doesn't count base armor and magic resist, that might be the reason it kind of sucks. It's hard to get enough of these stats to multiply for it to be good. And because like gargoyles again isn't meta, I don't think it's that good. But again, there might be situations where it is good and underrated. That for now I'm just gonna leave it where it is, because I think it is not terrible. It is a tank anomaly, and tank anomalies can be taken in any comp. Headhunter, I think it's just a worse. It's a combination of hypervelocity and power up, but I think it's just worse than both of them. It has a high ceiling, but it's not consistent. It gives a good amount of attack speed, but like because you have to get the kill, it's not it's not like it's just not consistent, and it takes too long a lot of the time. Best case scenario, you can get like 6 or 7 stacks like every fight, and then by the time you like go through stage 5 and stage 6, you have like 100 extra attack speed. But that's not realistic. I think by the time you're like in your last few combats in like mid stage 6, you probably have like 40% attack speed. In which case, like, it's not bad, but I feel like it's not that good. I think most people agree, but I feel like objectively I could be wrong. I think objectively other people could also be wrong because I think other people agree with me that this is not very good. But the idea behind this is to play like for high, like the maximum cap. I just think that this doesn't cap all that high, but I could see it in like Twitch comps or maybe like Silco comps, Zoe comps. But even then, like a lot of those units are gonna get kill stolen by Caitlyn, Mordekaiser, Jinx. So attack expert. This would be a lot better if it counted base AD, but it does not. As a result, it's really hard to get more AD. So it doesn't give that much, but you can still get a good amount of AD. Like it just multiplies your items and like traits, and you can get a lot of extra AD, but it's hard to min-max, and unlike with Magic Expert, you don't have like Dominator, you don't have like Archangels where you can like technically infinitely scale. This like AD is harder to come by, and you like it's just harder. So I feel like it's pretty good in the spots where you can get it. Like if you have like Conqueror, for instance, I feel like that's one of the best cases to take Attack Expert, for like Rebel, where you have like this AD, but otherwise, or like Tristana, I think those are like kind of the three main ones. But otherwise, it's hard to get enough AD for this to be good. But if you are playing a comp like that, then it's pretty good. It's, I think, still it's about comparable to like maybe Comeback Story, but only in like those super like specific situations. So I don't see, like, I can't put it like anywhere close to Comeback Story when this is like you can take this in any comp and be good. Whereas this you have to like have all the things line up for it just to be like comparable. But yeah, it's not bad if you have the right spot for it. Voracious Appetite, it's a new one. This is you just feed your units over time. This is Briar from set 12 from last set. You gain health and damage jump, and then every round you can sacrifice player health to feed some for some more stats. So if you never feed, these stats are like okay, but obviously you should feed. And because you're using player health, you should only take this if you're really healthy. The other situation would be like you take this in a comp that actually uses both of those well. I think of like mostly pit fighters, but like some other examples could be, I don't know, something like this. Maybe like hero augments as well. But yeah, you need to be at a high enough health to use this. Oh, actually, it works in AP units as well. But I don't think there's that many that I actually need to worry about. But yeah, if you are like, if you're playing from win streak and you're playing a comp that can use it well, then this truly does have a really high cap. But that's like pretty specific, and you're not gonna get this every game. So even though this has the potential to actually like this does have the potential to be like S tier, it's pretty rare. So I can't put it that high. There aren't enough comps that use it, and you're not gonna play it every like even if your comp does use it, if you're like 20 HP, you're not gonna take this. You're not gonna potentially sacrifice a life just for some stats that you can't even guarantee to win out. It follows the same rules as feeding Briar from last set, which is pretty hyper specific. It's when you are playing from a lead and you're playing for first. But a lot of the times I think people are going to be baited by this one and feed their units and then go 8th. So next is Calling Card. This is just like, I can't really put it higher, but this has high roll scenarios. I think there's a lot of good emblems that you can take, and you have the potential to really cap out your board. I think the easiest one is probably like Enforcer, because you just need a +1, and Enforcer +1 is really strong. I think there's other +1s that are also pretty good, like Experiments, like, I don't know. Now I think Visionary is probably pretty good because of the rework. Maybe Sorcerer, maybe Automata still, I don't know, maybe not. So if this gets you to a good like trait threshold, then it's pretty good. If you put this on a unit that like you can Like you're okay with either trait, then it's okay. The problem is that you're not guaranteed to get the good traits. So, like, let's say you want to hit 10 rebel, and you like have your drinks, and you have like, or you already have a rebel spat, and you want to get a second one and go for 10 rebel. Uh, but there's no guarantees that you're gonna get rebel. But it chooses randomly between one of the two traits. So because of that, you can just miss, and if you miss, sometimes you just feel bad. Like if you put it on a unit intelligently and it'll take at least an acceptable trait, it might not be that terrible, but it's still like a lot weaker if you miss your thing. If you hit the trait that you want, then I think that spike is really high, but it's just not consistent. So I think if you want to take the gamble, it's good, but I can't really put it like high because this is literally just like in most cases this is just a 50-50. Bully is like comeback story, except you can only take this in reroll comps. Yeah, and also the ceiling is like slightly lower, and also if you're playing against other reroll comps, this is not that good. They also nerfed it, so like it's like not even those numbers. So if you're playing in a reroll lobby, this just isn't that good. And then yeah, you also get outscaled by comeback story. But it's not bad. Like if you are playing reroll and you're not playing against other rerollers, then you can pretty consistently have the max amp, which is pretty good. But because you can only take this in reroll, and because you get outscaled and can get screwed over by other people rerolling, it's not that good objectively, but it's still not bad. Energy absorption, it's kind of the same thing as like defense expert, where like if you already like the min max is when you take this in comps that you already have a lot of AP, but you also have to wait for your ally to die, and then a lot of these boards you can't really afford that. I think it's okay in like dominators, but in like sorcerers, for instance, if your frontline is dead, like if you get your stacks and your frontline is dead, that means your frontline is dead, and then you don't have that much time with this extra AP. I mean, 30 flat is like fine, but even then, you're not getting like all this extra value until more units die. So if you're taking this on a comp that already has a lot of AP, because you're like the examples I would say are like Rebel, Sorcerer, Dominator, where you can actually get a lot of value like from the extra AP, but you're playing this in a comp that already has those, so you're not actually getting that much more, or you're getting more when you don't necessarily need that much more, and you're also waiting for them to die. And unlike mana, where this like helps you go infinite, and also every unit would want mana from like nothing wasted, energy absorption is like, oh, if your Alawi's dead, you have like 4 seconds before your carry is also dead. Or if your Swain is dead, like if you have a lot of units that you can sacrifice, then it's okay. Even then, like you would only take this in like a few comps, and even then it's kind of not consistent. I think now that you have like stuff like cultivating magic, this is just outscaled. This is just power crept. I think this is the cultivating magic is just a power creep version of energy absorption. And then I'll talk about power absorption at the same time. This is the same thing, except AD. It's just harder to get more AD. Like I think becomes better. Unlike, I'm gonna move this up a little bit closer to here, but it's harder to get enough AD. Instead of like playing a trait that gives AP, you have to probably play a reroll. If you're playing a reroll, then it's pretty good. But if your frontline is like dying, then it's not like you don't get the value up front very easily, so it's not that crazy. I think in something like maybe Zeri, it's probably acceptable, or maybe Enforcer. But even then, like it's hard to tell how much AD you're getting. I think they buffed it so it's like 9 now. That's fine. But you have to like look at how much like stats you're getting. Like if you reroll, you get more, so that's pretty good. Unlike with AP, your AD actually scales with star level. But if you're not rerolling, you're not like getting like a. I mean, it's not that bad, I guess. But it's still hard to get this to proc consistently. I think the easiest ways are like maybe Conqueror, because Conqueror gives AD. That's where you kind of can get a good amount of AD. but there aren't many traits that do that. So yeah, I'm gonna move this just to be like next to it. Yeah, they do the same thing, and I think either way. I think they're power corrupt by the new anomalies. So the finisher, this is an execute at 15% health. I think it's pretty safe to take on a lot of carries, but I don't think it's that crazy. I think it's like a little weak, but it's pretty safe to take, so it's in B tier. Freestyling, kind of the same thing, except it has a higher seal, it has a high cap, but you only take it if you have like a higher cap. If you have like at least like 5 traits, like 5 or 6 traits, then you probably would consider taking this. If you have any less than like if you have less than 6 traits, you probably should take this because it's just not enough. But once you get past like 20%, that's when it's like at least worth considering. And if you're playing something like Bronze for Life, if you're playing like if you actually have a lot of traits, then it's pretty good. This also counts like the unique traits. Like a lot of other things don't count the unique traits, like the High Roller, Junkyard, Titan, oh, whatever the other ones are called. Even the 6 cost ones. But like you just need the right spot for it. And because you can't guarantee it, it's usually worse than Comeback Story. But if you have a comp that uses it well, then this obviously has a really high cap. You can have potentially a lot of traits. Like you can maybe in a really, really good situation have like 45, 49, like 54% damage amp. That's a lot, and that's really, really powerful. It's just rare. So yeah. Strength training. It's magic training, except this doesn't scale your front line because they don't use AD as well. But it's pretty good. Otherwise, I think there aren't that many combos that use it. I think it's pretty good on Enforcer, and that's about it. It scales too slowly on the main unit, and I think it's power crept by power up. Otherwise, like I can't really think of what other comps like want team wide AD. Maybe like Pit Fighters, probably that would be the other one. Ambushers maybe to some extent, but they don't auto attack that much. Like I guess Ambusher Camille did, but Smeech doesn't as much. But yeah, I would probably say it's like Pit Fighters and the Enforcers. But even then, you would probably rather have power up on like your Caitlyn or like on your Vi or like something like that. So I think it's still pretty good in those two comps specifically, but I think it's worse than other options, and I think it's just not. It's just like I think it's B tier. Is what I think. Dual wielding, honestly, should be higher. I think, but it's like okay, so it's a safe option, and you just take this if you need another itemized carry. I think I've underrated it probably because I've gotten used to the idea of I have this extra 2-star unit. I should just put items on them, and this does pretty good for that. But I think this doesn't amplify the damage of one unit further. It just makes your board stronger by buffing another unit pretty much. So what the power of an anomaly normally is like you pretty much give a 4th item to your carry, but this doesn't do that. And there are some other anomalies that also like don't do that. But I think that's like the main thing. So instead you're getting 2 items for a different unit, which can be good in a decent amount of scenarios. I should probably put this higher, but I think a lot of people aren't going to want to take this because it's not like this is probably like a high elo skewed anomaly. I think in high elo people realize that putting items on another unit is good, but I feel like if you just want to make one unit really strong, this is not the anomaly to take. Call of the week. I think this one's a little OP, like sleeper OP, but it's not sleeper OP, but I think it's underrated. You get crit strike chance based on the target's missing health. You also have an auto target, so this doesn't work like Deadeye from sets 9, but it just changes your targeting. Having crit strike chance based on missing health is pretty underrated because it kind of is like an execute sort of. If you hitting, you can have up to like 100%. So if it's at like half health, you get 50% crit strike, and that's pretty strong. Like it's really hard to understand that this adds a lot of damage, and especially in the form of crit strike chance, because crit isn't something that's like really easily accessible. It's in the exact same category as like brutal claws, where if you have like Infinity Edge on a unit and you don't have more crits, this helps a lot. And even if you do, this just turns into crit damage, and that's also pretty good. But it doesn't have like if I were to compare this directly to Brutal Claws, which I think is like a direct like power creep version of this, you have like the bleed damage, which I think just kind of outskills this extra crit chance in some cases. And then the retargeting is like another thing that's like really unique to some units. Because what this does is it helps you target lower HP units, so you can kind of avoid getting stuck on a tank in some cases, which can be really powerful. And then on something like Tristana, this helps her get stacks because she retargets onto something that she's more likely to kill. There aren't that many units like that, but if you take the two components of this, I would probably move this like, because now that I look at it, I think both parts of this trait of this anomaly is probably better than like both parts of this anomaly. So this one I might move up, but I think a lot of people don't think that this is very good. So like I've had to move this down because people thought that this was pretty bad. I do think it's underrated, just because of a math standpoint, just because crit is really valuable. Both effects can be very valuable, but for now it's in B tier. Repulsor, attack speed and then uncast knockback targets within 2x's of them. This was meant to be like a protective thing for backliners, but I don't think anyone uses it that way. They just put it on the frontliner and they just knock targets around. When they buffed it, they buffed the range, but I still think that like Riot are like super hyper fixated on this being a backline anomaly when people are not using it that way. I think if anything, they should have just made the knockback go further instead of buffing the range. But I think this is like, while it's supposed to be like a protect your, like a self peel tool, it doesn't really do that. So, but 35% attack speed is fine, and if it does proc at a good time, it can be okay. But a lot of the times, they're just gonna knock them back, and then they just walk back and kill you anyway. So, but it has potential. It's just like not easy to take in a lot of, and it's also just like, it's just kind of like a fight RNG thing, where sometimes it like can win you the fight and sometimes it doesn't. Force of Friendship is comeback story and freestyling, except you can only take this in a reroll comp. It's good if you have a lot of stuff, but you can only take this in a reroll comp. But like not just a reroll comp, you need to take this where you have a lot of 3-star units. So like specifically like family or like Renata, but like where you're also rerolling for like everyone, then it becomes good. Otherwise, like if you get like at least 3, it's like acceptable. I think 4 is when it starts to become good, but if you're rerolling for 4 units, it's like not very easy to do. And it's just the worst version of comeback story because of that. Protective shielding is good because it's a tank anomaly, but it's a bit too nerfed, I think. It was really good when it like was like just launched, but now the shield is like, it's an okay size. I think shield's a little bit less valuable than healing, but there's a lot of comps that can use shielding pretty well. I think this is good in Sentinel. I think it's good in Watcher. And because it not only makes the unit tankier, but your like other allies, this can have a lot of value. I just think that it's a worse version of a lot of other tank anomalies. I still might move it higher just by being like the virtue of it being a tank anomaly. But if I were to like, if assuming that tank anomalies weren't better than other anomalies, then this is probably where this would be. But because this is like, this actually just makes you more tankier, this probably should be moved up. I think 50, like 15% max health is like every 8 seconds. It adds up. Not as much as other anomalies, which is why it's down here, but it also applies that to 2 other allies, which can make a difference. Though if your other units don't have like the items and stuff, to, like the investments to be tanky, like the shield doesn't actually do that much for them. In like an ideal world where you have like 3 frontliners and they all have items on them, then this becomes really, really strong. But if you put this on your units and this goes on to like a 2-star Irelia 2, like it's not really that crazy. Slow Cooker was super niche, but it had really high roll scenarios and in very specific comps with like Bruiser, Nunu, or Mundo, or Rennie. It's been nerfed, and now, 1, you can't guarantee it, and 2, I mean, they just lowered the number. It has high ceiling, but you can't force it. So yeah, if you have a really good spot for it, then it's good. It's just not very consistent at all. You can't take this easily in most comps. Like you need like a lot of health for this to like actually do work. But if you have a good spot for it, if you're playing Bruiser and you see this and you can get a really tanky Bruiser, then this is good. Because it's at least playable, it's in B. You just can't like you can't force it and it's a bit weaker. Titan of Teamwork is I think one of the last new ones. Yeah, it is Force of Friendship, but for durability. Because the number is so much lower, it's not that good. I think the number is a little too low, but if it were higher, it would also kind of be broken. Because durability is really hard to come by, and you need to have a lot of 3 stars for it to be good. But if you have like enough, then it's really good. Like if you have like 4 3 stars, I think specifically of like Renata comp that this is probably the best in. If you're like 4 3 stars, then this is pretty good because you can get to like 20 25% durability. But outside of that, it's kind of hard to get enough stats. Because in a normal board, this is just like 16% durability, which is not like while durability is valuable, it's not like an insane amount. Like it's technically worse than a steadfast heart. It's still like a fourth. It's a tank anomaly, and it can have a okay ceiling. So Scuttle Familiar, like now we're in T tier. Scuttle Familiar is just like it's situational because you want to put this on like a super tank, and then yeah, the skills with like how tanky like the one unit is, and like because the crab can't like use abilities or anything, it's not like insane. But like on units on comps where it's really important to have your frontliner, this is really good. I think this is best in Rebel, where Alawi's like so much of the board's value. She's holding the line. If she dies, this is like one, an extra life, and two, this is just another thing protecting your backline Zoe and your Jinx. In other cases, like Sentinel, it's a little less valuable. I mean, it's not that bad actually, but I think it gets outperformed by other tank anomalies that make the unit less likely to die, whereas this doesn't do that. It's just like is extra stall. I probably should still put this a little higher just by virtue of it being a tank anomaly and it protecting your backline. It doesn't. It's not like it's ever like bad to take. I just think other tank anomalies are better. I also don't know how this works with like stuff like Vander specifically. If you get like if he dies during this cast, I think this is also good on like gargoyles units, but the set doesn't have much gargoyles units. But in theory, like if you have like your like double gargoyles, Darius or like Swain or something, then this is like pretty okay. Heavy hitter, I think the damage is a bit underrated, but it's like you can only play this in Bruiser Comp pretty much. So because of that, I can't rank it really high, and I don't know. I feel like since the buffs that boosters got a while ago, where they buffed a lot of the units, this might be better. However, I don't really see this ever played. I do think the damage is like the amount is actually pretty high and underrated. You can get it pretty frequently, but it's just a little awkward. The other thing is that a lot of the best units have really awkward casts. Nunu's ability is a channel, and in that time he can't auto, and then same thing for Rennie, where like she's like channeling her thing, and that's time where she's not autoing. So the uptime is actually not that high. But if you were to take this on like if you have a bruiser spat, then it's probably pretty good on like Mundo or any other bruiser spat holder. But yeah, the problem is that because like the two best holders, two best users have like really awkward spells. I can't really put this anomaly that high. If we go into like a more of a bruiser meta, because there aren't that many comps that play with bruisers. It's mostly Twitch. But if we have other bruiser variations, or just where bruisers are more meta, this might be better. Because I do think that the damage it does is pretty underappreciated. It's just it doesn't get played in a lot of comps, and even then, you might not want it either way. But it has potential. Like it's not bad, so I think that's why it's here. Laser Eyes and I think Fireball are kind of similar. They're both flat damage anomalies that I think people don't like to take because all the pros say that flat damage is bad. But without considering that flat damage scales with uh like how tanky your board is. And the other, I mean, by flat damage, I mean board damage that, like, item damage that doesn't scale with your other, like, items and your unit. So, like, Laser Us is going to constantly do its damage. I think this number is wrong. I don't know. This is also got both. Yeah. It does consistent damage. It burns. Whenever you see something that says burn, it also wounds. So even though there's wound effect that doesn't do the burn, like the support item, Eternal Flame, like that wounds, but it doesn't burn. But this burns and also wounds, so you actually are getting anti-heal from this. Because of that, it's pretty underrated. The main problem is that the 3 hex is like kind of awkward. You need to put this on a melee units, and there aren't that many melee units that like would want to use this. Like some of the better users would probably be like Mord, but Mord probably would want other anomalies more than this. Echo is another one that's like, it's not bad, but Echo probably wants something that like scales him better. Like because it doesn't interact with his ability or with like his traits or anything, it doesn't have that, like it's not that crazy. As opposed to something like Center of the Universe where you can put this on a backliner. Laser Eyes you can't, so because of that, you kind of need to sacrifice survivability for this. Because of that, it's really hard to use. Again, there's a couple users that could probably use it pretty good. Like I would maybe think like Hero Augment Singed, maybe. If you were able to heal off of its damage, like from items, it would probably be better. But because this is counted as item damage, you can't benefit from healing from it. So if you have a Bloodthirster, you can't heal from this damage. It doesn't count. So because of that, I don't think it's like that's crazy. I do think the damage is like, I think people recognize that the damage is like underrated. But I think, for instance, I think most people are only considering this in like scrap on Echo, because the scrap shield is like defensive value. Otherwise, you could put this on like a tank, someone that would live a long time and proc this enough. But I feel like most people would prefer to have like just something that makes them more tanky over a damage anomaly on a tank. I don't know, it's kind of hard with the design space that it takes up. Fireball it's the same thing, except this you can put on a backliner, it just doesn't do it that much. It's specifically good on visionaries like Renata because she can cast frequently. Like she gets more mana, so she casts frequently. Other visionaries, it's pretty good. It's just I think it doesn't scale as well as some other anomalies. Like I think it just gets outperformed by stuff like, I mean stuff that increases damage. Like Killstreak, for instance, I think is more valuable. On specifically, like maybe not on like Renata specifically, but like on like Heimer, for instance. Killstreak, nothing wasted on on Malzahar. I think Cultivating Magic probably would outscale it. I think Comeback Story is probably more valuable. Like I think it's not bad. It also burns. This is another anti-heal effect, which is pretty good. But I think apart from Renata, other units would probably prefer other anomalies. Because of that, it's like, and like at least the damage scales with max health and it does %2 damage. It's just not frequent enough, and it's, I don't know. I think it's over nerfed. I think if it were, I think where it was before it was nerfed, it was fine. But now I think it's over nerfed, and it's takeable in a couple cases. It's good in some comps like Renata, but otherwise it's like kind of underwhelming. Knockouts. I think this is just the Camille anomaly. I feel like other units can't proc this frequently enough for this to do enough damage. So I was thinking about looking at units like Tristana, Draven, even like Kog'Maw, but it just doesn't do enough. If it worked on Zeri, it would be very good, but you can't take this on Zeri, so there really aren't enough units that use this well, and there's also a lot of units that have like their cast makes them do something for a certain amount of time. It locks them out of doing anything, and yeah. So like Twitch gets the 1 auto, and then he has to wait for 8 attacks, and then he has to build up his like spell again, and it takes too long to do anything. It's like maybe takeable on like Violets. Other than that, there really aren't many units that can use it well, so it can't be that high. Like maybe Ezreal. I mean, this might be just where I personally have not explored it enough, but it's like it's too niche for a lot of units. Like otherwise, it just gets outperformed by most other anomalies. But and specifically Camille, it's really, really strong because her mana cost is super low, so she can proc this a lot. 1000 cuts. Another one, kind of the same situation. It's pretty much only good on Kog'Maw because he's the only one that like ramps up attack speed a lot. It's like takeable on Zeri. People take this on Twitch, but I don't think it's that good because Twitch doesn't hit the same targets very often. This is only good at like the end of a fight. And there aren't that many other like pure auto attack users that like want Ginsu's and stuff. And even if they did, they would probably want it. This they want other things to scale the damage more than this. Like you can maybe consider this on like Draven, or like maybe Tristana. I don't know, maybe probably not TF. Maybe Mbessa. But I don't think it's that good on any of them. On Kog'Maw, like his damage is all auto attacks and his spell goes on attack. Like it's perfect synergy with Kog'Maw and it does a lot of damage. This is balanced around Kog'Maw, which is unfortunate because that means it's pretty bad for everyone else. So yeah, that's just, it is what it is. So on Kog'Maw specifically, this is like OP, but if you're not playing Kog'Maw, this is not that good, and it just gets outperformed by everything else. Dragon Soul, I think this is like the next center of the universe where people have started to realize that this is good. People like already knew about Twitch Dragon Soul, like that was pretty like obvious from the get-go, but now people are taking this on other units as well. I think in that regard, I think it's overrated. I think the problem with the front-loaded damage like this is that a lot of units can just heal it up, so it's not that valuable, as opposed to like the finisher, which is the exact opposite, where the damage is at the end, but like this is like if they are in the threshold, they're done. They die. With Dragon Soul, you can take the damage, like you take it immediately, but you can heal it back up, and it only procs once, and it's also only on attacks. So because of that, it's hard to like reliably get this to do the damage you want it to, but it's not bad. I think Twitch is the obvious one because you can proc this very frequently. Like you can proc this on a lot of units fast. Otherwise, you just need to, in theory, you like enemy units are playing with 20% less max HP, but you need to actually like capitalize on that, and there aren't that many units that can use it pretty well. Like you need consistent damage. You need good single target damage probably, realistically, and there aren't like that many units that like the damage is low. I think, I mean 20% max health true damage is a lot, so if you can capitalize on it, it might be good. Like I'm thinking of units like Kog'Maw where it's probably good. I think, I don't know where else people are using it, but if you have the means to like play around enemies having 20% less max health, then it's pretty good. But if the enemy can heal, if you're stuck on one unit, for instance, then this is just getting no value. Like if you're stuck on a tank the entire fight, then this is just worthless. So like you procced it once, and then that no more. So in that regard, I think I don't want to put it that high, but I can understand the arguments that some pros have for considering this to be pretty good and underrated. However, I would need more of a consensus amongst people to be willing to put it higher. Vampiric Affinity, I think this is in an awkward space where it is good. The problem is that the units that want Omnivamp probably have already built Omnivamp. So if you want more, it's good. I just don't think that's common. I think compared to like Berserker Rage, where you want, like, you're okay with having more AD and AP, having more Omnivamp doesn't provide as much value. You would probably take this on units that would want double healing, but you only have one. So maybe like an Echo or a Smeech, where if you only have like one source of healing, like maybe just a Hodge, then this is good. However, outside of those situations, you probably wouldn't take this because you have already built Omnivamp. Like if you already built Bloodthirster Hodge, you wouldn't take more Omnivamp. And I feel like if you are playing a unit that would want this, like the stat this provides, like you've already taken that into account. So yeah. Iris Incarnate, it's really good if you have a lot of gold. However, it is not very likely for you to have a good spot for it. It's just the worst version of Comeback Story. if you have a good spot for it, then it's good. However, it's super rare, like niche, and then also it caps like lower than comeback story. But if you just have a good spot for it, if you just have a ton of gold, like for some reason, and like you don't want to level or don't like if you can slow push levels and like stay above the threshold, then it's good. But like it's the other thing is that it's not like 1 gold, it's per 2 gold. So you need 80 gold to max out this, which is really hard to do for not much gain. If it were like 15 plus 40, then it'd be good, but it's not. It's just up to 40. Oh wait, so actually the cap is 25, so it's 50 gold. It's okay, it's not 80, it's 50 gold. But I mean, even then, having like staying above 50 gold is like pretty hard. Cybernetic empowerment. This is another attack speed one. Its skills, okay, it just takes too long, and attack speed is not like that crazy. I think if you're playing on a portal that uses it well, like a Savika portal, or if you're playing Scrap, then it could be good. The other things that the problem is that Scrap doesn't really have much attack speed users. Like it's Gangplank, but I'm not really sure if you want to Anomaly Gangplank in that comp. And then on other boards, it's hard to get enough attack speed for it to be relevant. And I think it's in the same space as Hyper Velocity, except I think Hyper Velocity, in my opinion, is better. Maybe not. I don't know. It's kind of awkward. I think it's probably like comparable to Headhunter. So I mean, it might be too low. I just personally think that it's weak, but it's also too new to like know. But I think most like even like Mort said it, it was probably a little weak. I'm just gonna take the word for now. If it's turns out to be like strong, uh, I'll move it. It's fine. But I generally am not very whelmed by this. I think it's like it looks like a little weak. Arcana overwhelming. And Evolution of Armor, it's kind of the same thing. I think this okay, these stats are wrong, but so they were turbo buffed, and now they give like a respectable amount of like stats. So for this alone, it's pretty good. This part is like kind of awkward because there aren't. I think this one's better because AP. This is better on tanks, so you could put this on a tank, or like Echo, I guess. If this is valuable in your lobby, if you're playing against like a lot of magic damage, then this is good, and then same thing for this. But it's hard to get this value to be consistent. So like you'd want an 80 units. You need to be playing an 80 units in an 80 lobby, and even though we're literally have been in an 80 meta for 2 patches, this anomaly still isn't that good. So I feel like that's kind of awkward. And then in the other patches, I mean, at least this anomaly had the benefit of the doubt that the numbers were way lower when we were in AP meta, and now that it's buffed up, I mean that's probably why they're like uneven, because right now we're in AD meta. But even then, this isn't really enough in a lot of cases. Like you'd probably take this on like Urgot by like all the AD units that are meta. Like I guess maybe like Mbessa, but this number still isn't that high. And I don't know. I just am kind of disappointed by the fact that this is literally the perfect time for this anomaly to be good, and it's not. It just doesn't do enough. I think the other thing is that I was really like hoping that this would be good on like Vander just because of how his spell works, but this doesn't even work on Vander because you lose the armor after like when you're about to do the punch, you lose the bonus stats that you get from his ability. So you don't even get like bonus damage on his ability. So it's not even good. It's not even good on Vander. But at least it gives armor, and this gives magic resist. And at least frontliners can use AP decently well. This is a little harder to use, but it has a use, and it can be taken in some spots. Share your energy. I think you just need to have a good spot for it. If you have a unit with a lot of stats, then it's pretty good. If you're playing like Conqueror, it's pretty good. It's okay in like Emissary with like Garen, but outside of that, it doesn't provide enough stats. If you can get to like 20 or so stats, like 20 or so like armor and magic resist to allies, then it's like okay, you can get to like respectable amounts. Like if you can give it like a Trinity Force worth to your allies, then it's pretty good. but I think in a lot of like you're not really gonna get there most of the time, and then you have infectious anomaly, which kind of does the same thing, at least for the damage part, but just does it better, and your board doesn't get tanky enough. Hunger for power is like too niche. It's good, but it's like you don't get enough. Like you can't force the comps that it's good in, and you don't get enough stats. But you need you can't because you can't force it. You're not gonna be in a spot where you're gonna get enough stats from it. You can get an okay amount of like AD and AP, or AD and health, but it's not like you're gonna get a ton. So, like if you're not specifically playing around it, and because you can't force it, it's just not that's valuable. Like if you're specific, like if you have a good spot for it, if you're playing like maybe Violet, if you're playing like maybe like Urgots, but like the normal Urgots build, not the hungry crab one. Who else would you even like be okay taking this on? Otherwise, it's kind of painful to sacrifice a unit for like stats that aren't greater than what you'd get from something else. So yeah, but in those like there are spots where you can take it if you recognize it. If you have a unit that you are able to sacrifice without losing much board strength, and you would be able to give your carry like a good enough amount of stats, then it's okay. Unstoppable Force, I think it's just the stats are too low. I think the charge and the stun is probably most of the value. The 10% max health isn't that much, and you also have to like it's only like the stun is only on one unit, and a lot of the time that part doesn't matter. 10% max health is like okay, but you're not like it's not gonna like a crazy amount. And sometimes like the units that use it best might already have this. Like I think a lot of the units that I think of that would be good with it are like the quick strikers. It would otherwise be okay on like maybe like Camille, maybe Urgots. I don't know what else. Like maybe Echo, like this stuff. But it doesn't like you would just prefer like so many other anomalies over this one. So yeah, I do think that this needs attention. Like I don't think it's been buffed at all, but I guess so. I guess Riot thinks this is okay, but I don't really see other people. I don't see people take this at all. I don't think many people think this is good. I could be wrong, and if so, I will just I can change the list. I can make adjustments, but I am personally of the belief that this is like not that strong. Yeah, that's the whole list. I will update this over time as new information comes. If you have any concerns, you can notify me on either the description of this video when that releases or in my Discord, which you can find on my Twitch or on my YouTube.